Medical innovation starts with medical discussion. Talking about the future and what comes next with Project MedTech.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lindsay Deneen, Director of Marketing and Engagement at Project MedTech, and welcome to another episode of the Project MedTech podcast. If we can help you in any way, or you would like to suggest a future guest, you can email us at info@projectmedtech.com. If conversations like this are helpful, that's exactly why we bring people together at our signature events, the Midwest Showcase, the Startup Symposium, and Coming to America. For more on our events that include networking, education, and pitch competitions for startups, check them out at www.projectmedtech.com. We even have sponsorship options if your company is also dedicated to accelerating medical technology to impact patient lives. So reach out today to get involved. The Project MedTech podcast is proudly sponsored by Ward Law. Ward Law Office, LLC is a boutique law firm specializing in the practice of patent and trademark law. They are committed to providing inventors, entrepreneurs, and businesses of all types with personal and professional services and are flexible to meet your unique needs. It is their goal to both educate on how to secure valuable patent and trademark protection and to provide high-quality services at rates affordable to independent inventors, startups, and small businesses alike.
Today's episode of Project MedTech is brought to you by Wheelhouse DMG, performance marketing for privacy-first industries like MedTech and healthcare. Every Wheelhouse client experienced record growth in 2025. That's the result of more than a decade building the data infrastructure, measurement systems, and domain expertise that healthcare and medical device marketing actually requires. Find out how every Wheelhouse client experienced record growth in 2025 at wheelhousedmg.com.
Without further ado, let's dive in.
Okay, Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Joe, so let's start with a introduction into yourself, your background in the life science space leading up to what you do now. And then because of how diverse and cool of a background you have, we'll dive in with questions from there.
All right, sounds great. Well, yeah, appreciate you having me. I guess important stuff first. Live outside of Pittsburgh with my wife of almost 26 years. I have two daughters, and I like to start there because, it's a reason I'm in healthcare. I say, working in life sciences and healthcare, it's both the most altruistic and selfish pursuit that there is. I'm a patient. People that I love are patients. So, want to make the world a healthier place. Been in sales and business development roles in healthcare and life sciences for over 25 years. The last dozen or so have been in the MedTech and tools space, a little bit of therapeutics. Work for a large global organization and, found it wasn't the best fit for me, wanted to go smaller. So I went to the other extreme and worked for a startup out of Philly for 2 years and really loved working with startups. I was like, I found my people. Energy was great. Kind of the alignment with the mission, this optimism that they could change the world. I just loved it. And from there, I launched a consultancy where I now work with early stage companies, by early stage pre-seed to about Series C, in life sciences and healthcare to help them to advance their commercial position. So it's everything from initial commercial storytelling, engagement with investors, engagement with strategics, market discovery, kind of setting the framework of their go-to-market, working in channel development, so distribution, group purchasing, government contract access, and then, what does it look like to actually commercialize? So hiring salespeople, training them up, coaching leadership. In addition to my consultancy, I also work as the head of MedTech investment for the Origin Foundation. It's a not-for-profit organization, a 501c3 that has the mission to do what they can to steward breakthroughs to the point where they actually reach patients. We focus on the most burdensome chronic diseases and take companies that have really, really good potential, good science, good technical foundation, but are just missing something in the translation, commercialization, and give them a makeover. really address those capability or knowledge gaps, get them to the point where they get to the next milestone, they can get to the next stage, and they're ready for venture investment or other investment to continue along the way. I recently also started working as a venture partner with Cipher Capital. Cipher invests via SPVs in partnership with a family office and also via syndicate. Their focus is, I would say, healthcare more broadly, leaning a little bit more towards the neurotech space, but willing to take a look at a lot of different things. Also interested in deep tech and space medicine. And in my spare time, I enjoy mentoring with a couple of different accelerator programs.
Awesome. Yeah, let's actually start with. Are you from Pittsburgh or just grow up there?
No, I grew up in New Jersey, went to school in Delaware, lived outside DC for a period of time, and came out to Pittsburgh. I had an internship. I was going to be a dietitian, and I was a dietitian, but I got an internship at UPMC and just kind of loved the area, settled down here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we just did episode 2. If people are listening in and interested in the Pittsburgh ecosystem, we just did episode 264 with Will Keigler and Megan Shaw, who are in the Pittsburgh ecosystem. And we've also, because you mentioned UPMC, which is University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, if people are interested in understanding more about that, episode 223 was with Harrison Lands. And then we episode 219 was with Kelly Collier from LifeX.
Hmm.
So if you're interested in more about the Pittsburgh ecosystem, those 3 podcast episodes would be good to go back and listen to for all the people who are listening in. Okay, yeah, walk me through. I want to get to sales and really spend some time there. The Origin Foundation sounds super interesting as well, so we'll have to include a link to that in the show notes for anyone who's interested more in that. Talk to me about finding your people with startups, because I totally agree with you. We just love working with startups. It's very infectious. Love the life science piece of it too. What else drew you to that besides just the fact that it's an infectious mindset with the entrepreneurs? Was it the fact that you get to wear 20 different hats any different day, or walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say it is that, when I walked into the door of Biomeme, that's the name of the startup. I I would say that, I'm a sales and business development guy. I don't have an operations bone in my body or a finance bone in my body or what have you. And what I quickly found was that you it was a great application of all of the years of experience that I had picked up. There's some of it, I had picked up formally by asking people to understand more about who they are, what they do, and learn from them. A lot of it was through osmosis as well. So there was an opportunity to lend value in a variety of different areas. And I would say also the chaos of a startup is something that's not a fit for everybody, but it was energizing for me. I'm okay with uncertainty. I'm okay with taking risks, intelligent risks, but taking risks. I'm okay with kind of bucking tradition and trying something new. And that's what startups are about. Very rarely do you run into a startup that needs my kind of help or even your kind of help that's just kind of copying something that's out there, altering it slightly and following the exact same path. Every organization is a little bit different, and I'm also fascinated with people. There's one of the executives that I work with way back when used to say that the business would be easy if it weren't for the people, and it may be true in certain instances, but I just love the people, and the more prickly, the better. I love folks that have personality quirks and might be a little bit difficult to work with sometimes. Often they're the ones that, end up being my closest network connections. So, just meeting so many different people, different backgrounds, and seeing how they do what they do and how they grow over time is just pretty amazing.
Yeah, people are one of the unknown variables,
Yeah.
and I think that's what makes business so hard. It's the same thing, if you related it to sports, so many teams should win on paper technically,
Hmm.
but they don't. And it's the same thing with business. You can build multiple strategies, and they're probably all decent strategies. I mean, sometimes people get strategies wrong, right? But there's only so many options there. It's just, do you have the ability to execute and make the decisions throughout the game to succeed? And so it is I love being around that, because it's these startups win because of the team around them, and that's a huge piece of it. Um, Talk to me a little bit about, you're helping these companies save the commercial side on the fundraising side, and literally this is great timing because we just had a conversation about this internally today at Project MedTech of, you know, the companies who pitch well, what are they doing well? And for us, we had identified they can relate the problem to something that anybody can understand, um, and they also explain why the economic stakeholders care. Fundamentally, they do those two things super well. And so I'm curious, for you, you've been around a lot of them. The ones that do it well, where do they succeed? And the ones that don't, what do they kind of fall short in?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Those are definitely two important elements. There's one thing that I think, and it's really hard to pin down specifically to say like, well, founders will ask, well, how can I do this better? It's hard to say, to appear more coachable, to be more relatable. One of the things I think that a lot of times founders, they either don't realize, or they spend so much time deep in their company, they don't recognize how it comes across to other people. With early stage investors, you're entering into a relationship. And in that relationship, you're going to be together for a long time. Things are going to go well, things are not going to go so well. And like any other relationship, you need to figure out, am I going to get along with this person? You know, okay, great, the grand vision, and we can get from here to there, and the finances work out. But if you just don't get along, or you're not coachable, you have this unhealthy tunnel vision. You're not willing to look at outside perspectives. An investor is going to look at that and say, like, this isn't somebody that I want to work with. So I think most fundamentally, getting back to what we were just talking about, people, how people are so important. Can you engage with somebody on an interpersonal level where you're just somebody they want to get into a relationship with? And part of that is just having that self-awareness. And I know you said you wanted to discuss sales, and this kind of ties into that a little bit, but looking outside yourself and understanding, what does my audience really care about? What do they want to hear about? Um, how can I best speak to them in a way that aligns with their incentives? Those are the things I think that separate people that are successful in a pitch from ones that aren't. And there is a talent to it. I don't necessarily have it myself. There are some people that can stand on stage with a guitar and a microphone, and they can play really well and sing really well, and it's just beautiful. It doesn't matter what comes out of their mouth or what they play, they're just good at it. And there are other people that really struggle. And I would say that it's not natural to me. I'm not the best at it. But there are things that you can do to make yourself come across a little bit better with the flow of the presentation. And a lot of it comes down to just practicing and getting outside perspective, asking people, what do you think? Not only what do you think, what did you not like, and what can I do better? And through that practice, and really not only asking the question, but actively listening and keeping your mind open to what you can do better, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for folks to improve over time.
Yeah, and when you think about fundraising, I mean, it's a process. When we were talking about the pitch earlier, that's step one. That's, hey, can I get someone to want to go on a second date with me?
Yes.
Or want to go on a first date with me, right? This might just be them getting attention, and then it's a process from there. And you might excel at the relationship building process, but maybe you're struggling at this process. And so,
Right.
the relationship piece is um, totally spot on. And I think the one thing we've seen a little bit there on the relationship side of things is, yeah, you are getting into a marriage with these investors. They're going to be around for a long time. And so they want to know that, when things get tough and there's external factors and it's stressful, that you're going to work on that relationship. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
right.
so funny, but
Absolutely.
you started off the podcast by saying you've been married for 26 years, right?
Yep.
That doesn't happen. It hasn't been just all roses for 26 years. There's tough parts of life that you're going to go through. It's the same thing in business. And
Yes.
to your exact point, they want to know that you're in it for the long haul and you're going to work through those
Yeah.
things with them. And people can tell when you're being fake about things or you're being honest with them. And one thing we've always said is that no surprises. If there is a rocky road 2 years ahead, you should identify that right now with this investor. Hey,
Yep.
this is what I'm concerned with. I think we can mitigate these things, but these could be issues in the future.
Yeah, and there's a part of human nature too that if everything is rosy, you're kind of waiting like, what's the catch? You either
Right.
think that somebody is selling you or they're ignorant to the problems. And that kind of where I started, like that humility, that coachability to say, we're not perfect. And for an early stage company, you're not expected to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to have capability gaps and knowledge gaps and things that you don't quite know because you haven't gone from here to there before with your specific product. But just the recognition that everything isn't perfect, we want help, and then there's value to be shared on both sides. We're going to give you a really good product or a really good service at a good price that aligns with where you want to be from a financial standpoint. And what we expect in return is that you're going to be a really good partner to us and you're going to be an ally and a supporter of our success.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Um, so, on the commercialization front, um, walk me through your initial introduction into commercialization, because commercialization in healthcare is hard. And we talk about it a lot on the podcast, but to kind of set that stage, you're innovating something for patients who are the direct beneficiary of this, but maybe not the direct financial beneficiary of this. Then you have
Right.
to get clinicians to adopt your technology, and their whole motivation is, hey, I got to keep these patients safe. And so I got to know this is going to work if I use it. And then you have two different heavy economic or financial stakeholders in payers and providers. And so, um, yeah, walk me through a little bit of that, like thinking back to yourself 25 years ago when you're getting in and you're learning this and you're trying to think about sales in this and commercialization, and what were some of those big learning experiences for you that you either learned the hard way or a mentor was like, you need to solve for this?
Yeah. Um, so it's always a learning process. It's one of the things that I enjoy most about participating with mentorship programs and speaking to folks like yourself that, as I engage with other people that have been doing it a while that really know what they're talking about, I learn something every day. And it's just, what a joy to be able to continue to learn at this point in my career. Early on, I would say one of the kind of inflection points in my development as a sales professional, commercial professional, was the first time that I took a position with a company that said to me, when you engage with a customer, your number one priority is the patient. So you're going to ask yourself, is this good for the patient? The number two question you're going to ask yourself is this good for the client? The number three question is you're going to ask is this good for the company that we work for? And the fourth one is you're going to ask, is it good for you? And it was an odd thing to hear because up until that point in my career, what I've heard from all of the people around or above me is we put these incentives in place, go and make that money and just drive to that because all the other stuff, it doesn't matter. It's all about performance. And it creates, and I see it in a lot of salespeople. Sometimes it makes them really good salespeople, this like self-absorption, like what is good for me? What makes me successful? And it could make salespeople really successful, but I don't know that it builds these lasting relationships. So, the idea of we're in healthcare for a reason, patient always comes first. But then if you focus on the client, your customer, is this something that is really good for them? If you can answer that question, yes, then kind of the other two are easy. Is it good for the company? Yeah, obviously you're out selling. In most cases, it will be. There's bad business that you need to walk away from, but in most cases, it, will be. And then if those other three things fall in line, it's good for you as a salesperson. The second thing that I think was really impactful as I was coming up was I came to the realization that as I'm engaging with MDs and PhDs and MD PhDs and these experts in whatever, I'm never going to be as smart as them. I don't have any letters after my name. So there needs to be another way that I can lend value. And I really started, and this goes back probably 15 years ago, to focus on working my network. That I think it's a general truth in business that people will all agree to, that if you know somebody, it makes the process easier. And I set out to build and cultivate a really strong network of folks that do all kinds of different things. And it's been really helpful for me throughout my career that when I ask you my favorite question, the same thing that I ask to anybody with whom I network, any founder, what do you need right now in order to be more successful? It doesn't matter what comes out of your mouth. I'm usually 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from finding a solution for you. And that's really powerful that, if you can not be Joe the sales guy or Joe from XYZ startup or Joe the founder, whatever, if you can be Joe the problem solver, the one that solved a problem, the one that introduced me to this person that is so wonderful, that enhances your brand, your personal brand, your professional brand, but also enhances the value that you have in that relationship. And it's something that I think if you ask the companies with whom I engage, what is the one thing that Joe does better than anybody else, or the one thing that's most valuable about working with Joe, I would say it's my network. That I just know really, really good people, super smart and good, kind-hearted too. They want to see innovation succeed, and it's been really cool to see some of the great things that have come just from a simple network connection.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We embodied that at the beginning with Project MedTech, which was, can we build a network, give it away,
Yeah.
and really help the companies we're supporting? And if we can do that and they're successful and we created value for them, then they'll probably do more work with us in the end, and
Yeah.
that's been a thing that I think is totally beneficial. And I think that comes back, that's about building those relationships. We talk about building relationships with investors, but it's about building relationships with other people as well.
Yeah.
I want to hit on hiring salespeople because you brought it up. And then I'll ask about other issues you see with companies who are going through commercial scale up. But talk to me about hiring a sales team, the difficulties of it, the importance of it, and how important the training and having systems set up for them to come in is. I mean, it's just, it is a it is an expensive task as a
Yeah.
life science company, but it's one that I always argue as a necessity. There's a lot of startups who come to us and say, well, we're gonna hire a 1099 sales force who's going to carry our product for us, or it's going to be a distributor, whatever it is. And I say, great, that could be a sales strategy. Who's owning it though internally?
Hmm.
And if you don't, you have to have someone who wakes up every day and thinks about one thing, and that is getting your product in the hands of users and selling that thing, or just getting it out there. And if you don't have an
Yeah.
individual doing that, it doesn't matter how many people you have across the country selling this, it'll just be mediocre sales. And so walk me through this a little bit and dissect it, because it is a daunting task for a startup company, especially if they're going to manage their own sales team and hire their own sales team. It's expensive, but
Yeah.
it could also it's what gets you through the valley of death.
Yes. Yeah, it does. And it's so very important. Going back to how I started the conversation about funding and early stage investment, I think particularly for your first hire or your first hires, it's really important to find the right cultural fit. The thing about salespeople is that they're good at selling. They're good at selling themselves. And I run into a lot of companies that will say, we are in the pick your, industry vertical. Our first hire was this guy who was former pick your large OEM in that industry vertical. And they're wowed kind of by the big name and the pedigree. And what they find out is they weren't a good cultural fit. They weren't the right person to do the job that needed to be done. And there's something that's very, very difficult about launching a product, introducing a product into the market that may be worlds different than anything that's out there. It may be nothing like anything that's out there. Doing it for a company that has no brand recognition, doing it for a company with very thin supporting resources that maybe they don't have medical affairs yet. Maybe, their customer support person is also the person that's pick packing and shipping product and I don't know, answering the phones. Like there are so many different things about the infrastructure that aren't there with this small company. Can you find somebody that's willing to go on that path with you and stumble and do the hard work and grind and get told no 1,000 times, but still come to work and smile and be willing to improve with you? And can you find that person also that's that isn't laser focused only on the financial upside, that really wants to do things right from the beginning, not just execute for short-term incentives. So the one of the people that interviewed me for a prior company said, I believe that you should hire slow and fire fast. And I don't know about the latter, but the beginning part of it, I completely agree with, that you really need to be very thoughtful and prescriptive about those initial hires and find somebody that you think would be good for the company and that you could work with ongoing and not be kind of wowed by all the flashy stuff that might appear on some resumes.
It's so funny. We One of the things that we talk about too, and I think this gets into culture, but this also gets into, like, at a high level, startup, how startups need to think about their companies. Is I hear a lot of people are like, oh, they like to culturally say we're a family, our company's a family. I personally, I hate that. I think I think your startup is should be run like a sports team. People
Okay.
change and grow, get better in areas so much. The team's needs change, but also roles can change based on how players are developing. And like basketball is a really easy example of this, but when you bring in a rookie, well, maybe they have a specific role that year, but by the next year,
Mm,
they've grown so much that they need an expanded role and they're going to have to take on some other things, or maybe their skill set has changed so much based on other pieces that have come to the puzzle. That to me is a much better representation of how you should think about it, because I think family dynamics is families go on forever, so it's very easy for you to
yeah.
get locked into your family role, but that might not be who you are. I think that sometimes is like a very common misconception where it's like, well, I hired this person to do this. Maybe they've grown out of that and into another role that either fits the team that you need now or doesn't. And so
Yeah.
Um, I think it is that's also on that sales side too. The other thing I think I see on sales, which I'd be curious on your opinion on this too, is like sales is a marathon.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of breaking points throughout that race. And the ones that are really good are the ones that just stayed stubborn towards the things they were doing. I see a lot of people who trial some things that doesn't work, so they stop. And I think they just didn't give it enough time to really see that payoff. Do you kind of see that on the healthcare side of things as well? People get beat up over time to get into a hospital system, so they just kind of give up on it.
Yeah, I do see that, but I think it comes down to kind of like a flawed approach to sales. That if you ask most people what they think sales is, the one word that they would use is convincing. Getting somebody to do what you want them to do. And I think that sales is about alignment. And if you approach it that way, then another truth is that if you are not aligned, where you can offer value to them to make them more successful, to help them to achieve whatever they need to achieve as a customer, then you haven't earned the right to sell. So, yes, if you think it's about convincing them, you go in and say features and benefits, and here's what I got, would you like to buy it? No, not right now. Well, oh, geez, that's so disappointing. If you approach it from a perspective of alignment, am I fully aligned to be able to offer value to this customer in a way that they need value delivered? Then you won't ask for the sale until you're pretty sure that they're ready to say yes, that you can make a compelling argument that they should move forward with you. And it kind of goes back to earlier we were talking about like hiring for salespeople. Salespeople in healthcare and life sciences, I think, can have like three different skill sets. Sometimes you see two of them together. Very rarely do you see three of them together. More than likely, somebody fits very clearly in one bucket. The first one is really good technical salespeople. So they may or may not have letters after their name, but they can go toe to toe with any PhD. They can go toe to toe with any MD. They can talk about studies and data and get as deep as you want. Great. There are other folks that are good in the moment salespeople, convincers. They know spin selling and they know consultative selling and they know challenger selling and they know 18 different ways to close somebody. And they just go in and they're slick and they can guide a conversation and get somebody to do what they want to do. And then the third bucket is people that can get deals done. So they might not have the technical skills, they might not be able to guide that conversation, but when I was talking about alignment, they can assess a customer or a potential customer, understand who they are, sometimes better than they know themselves, understand very clearly the very critical things for their success and say, I align to all of these in such a way that they need to move forward with me. And then they can get to the place where everybody agrees and everybody signs on the dotted line. It's I don't know when I talk to a startup what kind of salesperson they need, which skills that they're looking for. The one that I think is missing most as I interact with startups is that kind of person that can get a deal done. And that includes getting a funding round closed or getting an investor that, they're really founders tend to be really great technically. They know the science in and out. And some of them are very charming and they can get you to really like them and buy into what they're talking about. Getting that deal done is harder and it requires, I think, a lot more work. You need to do your homework and you need to figure out like, is this a good fit? You need to customize the message into something that this other person really cares about. And you need to do it in such a way that you can tie back to what makes them successful. And it's hard. And I think that I would say we are in a similar place, that we've been around a while and we're guiding startups, that we need to do a better job of communicating that to some of these founders so that they can make better hiring decisions, they can go to market more successfully, and also they can be more successful when they're seeking to fundraise, because the message that they're providing is compelling as opposed to just a slick drive-by sales pitch.
I th- it's so funny because so I'm a scientist by background, and my first intro into sales was selling services for a company called NAMSA and Covance in the CRO
Hmm.
space. So I was selling services. I mean, similar to what Project MedTech does now, and I had a technical background, so I kind of filled that piece of it, right? But I think when I reflect on that, what I was good at was the latter that you discussed, which
Okay.
is understanding understanding upfront where there was a good matchmaking deal to be had and getting that across the finish line.
Hmm.
I'm not a slick salesperson. I don't know all the personas. I mean, I took a training on it. So like I know them, but
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about that when I'm talking. I'm thinking about
Right.
this person, what this individual company needs and what we can provide. There's a high alignment here. I'm going
Yeah.
to get this deal across the finish line because I know this is a good match. But I was very good at identifying when there was a big mismatch, what needed to happen to potentially change that, but also prioritizing that time. I mean, that was like that. I felt like that's what I was good at. I've never, I've I think just reflecting on that, I don't think that I have that conversation enough with startup companies when they're thinking about their initial commercialization strategy. We talk to them a lot about getting those first few customers that are going to help you collect clinical data. And a lot of times we sit there and we talk about the filter and go, okay, well, this is a high volume site. This is a this is not. This is an academic center, which is great. But are we digging that layer deeper to say, well, maybe this group is actually really, they may not be the highest volume site for what your product does, but maybe there's some underlying thing that actually makes them the highest potential matchmaking possibility, and I think that's
Yeah.
a really good way. You have to do that later on in sales, but I think at the very beginning that's really important because you want to soft circle those ones that there's probably the most alignment with, regardless of size, dollar amount, anything. Because that those first few customers, it's all about let's get in, let's figure out what's going right, let's figure out what's going wrong, let's really trial the sales cycle, let's get that clinical data, and let's get a reorder, right, and let's get some
Yeah.
expansion.
Totally, you're totally right, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. That those initial customers are so very important because you need to show that initial commercial traction, but also they're a way to demonstrate that external validation point that's going to continue to offer value along the way as you raise money, as you add other customers, whatever. There's nothing, well, I guess having no customers is worse, but it is so very damaging to a company that has a customer that then goes away or utilization significantly decreases. That it's like one of those things where it throws up a red flag immediately. It jumps off the page that you have to ask the question about it. Why were they so loyal to you and then not? And, I would say that that's a point where humility can come in as you tell that story, to say, well, we just don't have experience with it. What we should have done was this, and we didn't, and that's why they dropped off. But it, you shouldn't need to have that conversation if you're fully aligned. If you're having that conversation, another thing that's important too, if you're asking the dumb questions, I understand in general what quality means. What does quality mean to you in the context of this conversation? When you say purchasing makes those decisions, okay, who in purchasing can I talk to understand how they make those decisions? You know, I'm a physician. It's a huge pet peeve of mine when people receive their external validation because physicians at conferences say that they want it. You know, I'm the physician. I say that I want it. Okay, I know you're not the one that's going to be buying it. You're not going to cut me the purchase order. You know, or you're not, there's a department that does the test that I'm asking you to order. Can you make that warm introduction and then start at the beginning? How would you, how do you evaluate new potential technologies or whatever, asking all of those really fundamental dumb questions, sometimes asking them 2 and 3 times until you really understand. That's all of the stuff that pays off in the end, because when you do find that fully aligned customer, you know inside and out how they make purchasing decisions. You know what their concerns are. You know how to keep them sticky as a client and keep them happy. You know what to expect for them as far as like feedback and contracting cycles and how to best work with them and systems and customer service and servicing and everything else. It's so very important. Big names can go out the window. I would rather take somebody where you're fully aligned. They love you and they're going to love you forever, and you're just best buds.
Yeah, totally agree. I love it. I got 2 questions here as we kind of wrap things up here. The first one is, um, if there was a company who was looking to come from outside the U.S. to the U.S. market, what is that one thing that they need to know in order to be successful? This stems from. I'll give you, while you're thinking about this, I kind of give you the origin of this. Is we did an event last year. We got it coming up here in Ireland in September. It's called Coming to America, after the Eddie Murphy movie, and we were supposed to spend 30 minutes on it. My
Hmm.
one of my coworkers, Sean McGibbon, and I spent 2.5 hours going over the U.S. healthcare system at a healthcare level and insurance level, and that was like the origin of like just how different our healthcare system is versus single payer healthcare system and all the nuances of those things. And so when you have a company coming from a single payer healthcare system to ours, explaining to them that takes way more time than you think. There's a
Yeah.
lot of questions that, to your point, what they're really good at is, I don't think U.S. companies actually understand it. To be clear,
Okay.
but I think that they ask those dumb questions, quote unquote, right? Where it's like, well, wait, how does that work? Well, who does that? Wait, what is Medicaid? What is Medicare? Like, we know these words. I bet there's not a lot of people who can explain the difference between those two, but
Yeah.
so I'm curious, like from a commercialization standpoint, though. Yeah, what's the first thing you're like, hey, everyone, you got to figure this out first?
Yeah. I wish that it was an easy answer because it is so very different. And I would agree with you. The the folks that come from outside of the US are willing to ask those questions. It's okay for them to not
Mhm.
know.
Yeah,
And there's something charming about that.
yeah,
Like, how do things work here?
yeah.
Like what a great question
Hmm.
that you or I could not get away with asking, to any like health system or something. It's so funny. But I would say regulatory, I think that they get that there is a regulatory process. So I'm going to put that to the side.
Hmm.
The health economics and reimbursement, I think, is extremely important to understand that. And that is not my bailiwick. I know enough to know what I don't know. And I would say engaging with somebody that really understands that very well is extremely important. To not only be able to say, here's how our product or service fits into what's going on right now, but also here's how it can fit in right now, but to various different niches of the market. So, very broadly, you have your government payers and your commercial payers, but then you also have your managed Medicare payers and you have your managed Medicaid payers and you have your, fully capitated health systems, and you have your, I don't know, with the VA, you have the VA, which is kind of a one-payer system, but it behaves a whole lot differently than, a Kaiser as a fully integrated health system or as an Optum. Like understanding kind of the payer landscape and health economics more broadly, I think is extremely important before you make any decisions to allocate resources. And that's really super important. Like, where are you going to spend your time and where are you going to spend your money? Or where are you going to spend other people's money? Going back to the investment conversation, really understanding before you make any commitments is super important. Another thing that I would say, I guess, outside of the health economics and reimbursement, coding coverage and reimbursement, would be, understanding that the way that things seem are not the way that they are. One of the things that I love seeing coming out of the World Cup is these, international fans coming to the U.S. and saying, wait a minute, like Americans are awesome. Like they're such nice people. Like what they see is not what they expect. Healthcare is not what you expect from what you see internationally. Everybody talks about embracing innovation and being on the front edge, and we're the tip of the spear of innovation. Nobody wants to be first. They're so risk averse.
Hmm.
It doesn't, unless they're invested in you, and even if they're invested in you as a health system, they do not want to be first. So when you come to the US with a product and you say, this is novel, this is new, it's like nothing else you've seen before, what you're going to get is, wow, that's awesome, I want to learn more. And when you ask, okay, so how do we get it adopted? The response you're going to get is, oh, well, we're not early adopters. If one of these other folks uses it, come back to us and then we'll, consider it. That this image or brand of embracing adoption is not really, embracing innovation is not really what happens when it comes down to it. And also, and I don't know if this is necessarily unique to the US, one last thing, does this fit into clinical workflows in a way that makes it palatable for a hospital or a health system? If it is too much of a departure, it does not matter how much benefit there is to the patient, to the economics, to outcomes, whatever it might be. It needs to be at least easy-ish to adopt into those clinical workflows in order to be able to drive adoption.
Yeah, I I love all of that. That's such good advice. It's good advice for even companies who are innovating here in the U.S. Actually, and that's another good point about you brought up Kaiser, but I believe both UPMC and Allegheny in Pittsburgh are both
Hmm.
very similar in how they're structured as well. So those are just good examples to know of different people who may be motivated differently than other health systems. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, you can obviously see in my background here that I enjoy to read.
Yeah.
And I think you do as well. Well, I take that back too. I enjoy to read. I enjoyed more to read before I had a 5 and a 3-year-old. So the books are limited each year now. But give me a book or two. It could be fiction, nonfiction that you might recommend for the listeners. And again, it could be related to a business that you found valuable or personal growth, or it could be just a fun read.
Yeah. I would say I enjoy reading Malcolm Gladwell, Adam Grant, and Simon Sinek. It's not too.
Yep.
I'm not. I don't know that I'm blowing anybody's minds with that. Um, the I don't have formal business training going way back. So it's um, understanding kind of like some of these things about organizational behavior. I think is pretty fantastic. I also really like that. All three are their perspective on the world is very different. They see things that other people don't. So I really enjoy reading them. I have Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman on my desk that I've been on the first chapter for. Okay, gotcha.
That's that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that, enjoy reading that. And I guess talking about like media, I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History podcast as well. He's one of the great question askers I think that we have. That he asks really interesting questions, and I appreciate that. Again, make you think of the world a little bit differently and how you engage with other people.
I love all of those. I mean, that's most of my shelf was on
Okay.
this side here. Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky, if you don't have time to read all of their books, because they have Thinking Fast and Slow, and then this one here, if you're watching this, because people watch it now, Noise is another one. The Undoing Project right here by Michael Lewis summarizes all of their work for the most part. And so like it's a much faster read than all of their work. You can get the gist of what their research showed, but the Undoing Project was really good. It also gets a little bit into their relationship, which I thought was pretty fascinating too. But
Yeah.
yeah, so many of those good ones. And yeah, anyways, awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. We'll have links to kind of everything we talked about here in the show notes. Hang on for a minute and we'll chat offline. But yeah, really, thanks for hopping on the podcast and talking about commercialization and relationships and fundraising and communication. It's a really valuable episode for early stage innovators in life sciences.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do. Our
Oh, thank you.
life sciences founders can't have enough good people rooting for them and supporting them, so appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Hi, I'm Freddie Coffey, Director of Marketing at Jumpstart. The Project MedTech podcast is proudly sponsored by Jumpstart Inc. Jumpstart's Trailblazer Accelerator helps Ohio's most innovative early-stage health tech startups fast-track their growth with tailored advising from serial entrepreneurs, non-dilutive funding to fuel their journey, and unrivaled access to a network of experts, resources, and investment opportunities. Whether it's improving patient outcomes, advancing digital health, or reimagining care delivery, Jumpstart provides the high-impact services and critical resources to bring big ideas to life. Learn more at jumpstartinc.org/startups.
Thank you for listening. At our core, we at Project MedTech are networkers, educators, and consultants. We meet you where you are to bring value and to create impact. We care deeply about helping medtech companies succeed right from the start, through to exit, by providing consulting and fractional services, hosting impactful industry events, and of course, sharing incredible guest insights like the ones you heard today through our podcast. Please reach out at any time if we can be of assistance. Check out our website at www.projectmedtech.com or email us at info@projectmedtech.com.